Hello friends, Jennifer Pearson here, and it is tag time, and I've been watching people doing this tag started by Katie Flowers. I don't even know if Katie did this to start a tag, but she did start a tag. I think that is the definition of an influencer. So she had gone through, and I think this was like, I don't know if it was the second year in a row or if she'd done it at some point in the past. This 10 decks exercise, you might call it. And she decided to do it again this year and shared her choices and how they had changed. And I've been watching them, so thank you, Katie, for giving me things to watch, and for everybody who's responded for giving me things to watch. And it got me thinking. So it is kind of an interesting self-knowledge exercise. So yeah, and I'm going to go through mine it's not completely in the order, or is it? Yeah, pretty much in the order that I thought of them off the top of my head, and then I reached a point where there was no more off the top of my head and I had to look at my decks, and I actually looked at a list. I have a list of my decks, and I looked through them to narrow it down, and then to narrow it down again. So I'll talk about that maybe a little bit as I go. So the first two are decks that, and let me say this, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. The first 6 are Oracle decks. I did always know that I would have, the Rider-Waite-Smith Centennial. I always knew. So, spoiler, it's coming. I always knew that that would be one of them as well. But for whatever reason, it was clearer to me, for the most part, the Oracle decks that I would keep. And so, first of all, medicine cards. Probably, I don't know if I had to choose between the newer version and the version I've had since forever, since the 90s, if I would choose the newer version. But yeah, the medicine cards, because they're familiar. I just value them. I don't know what else to say. I value them, and you will see that there's other animal energy among the decks that I have chosen here. So, yeah, I would keep my medicine cards for sure. And I can't even articulate very well why, except that they have been my deck for a long time. I haven't used them very much since I've had deck proliferation, since I've gone through that. I don't use them that much, but I think there's a matter of trust that has built up with this deck, where if I were reduced down to 10, that this would still give me what I need. Old reliable, call it that, old reliable. And the next one is another one that I haven't used a lot recently, but here's my latest. I don't remember when I pulled these. It wasn't too long ago. So last Friday, I started pulling them out more occasionally. And there's also a newer version of this with more cards. This is the Angel cards, and I don't know what else to tell you. I've had these also. I may have had these longer than I've had the medicine cards. I'm pretty sure that I've had these longer than I've had the medicine cards. So you could even say that this was my first deck. There are these little tiny cards with little angels, so very minimalistic, and yet the little pictures do make quite a bit of sense. So what did I have? I always pull 3 with these: responsibility, transformation, efficiency. And I think I was getting prepared to go visit family, and I was saying, give me just something basic to focus my day as I'm prepping. And those are the things that came up. And And so that little picture I just showed you with efficiency shows an inbox and an outbox, and then somebody sequestering under the desk in order to get work done. So the backs, I don't know if the backs have stayed the same, are very plain. They just look like that. And yeah, again, for simple message, and it's really great for daily draws like that. Just focus your day on those things. No frills, no extra. Just do it. Just do what they tell you to do. Yeah, and there's quite a variety of words in the angel cards, and they're highly portable, and they have a lot going for them. If you haven't tried them, they're cheap. Another thing that they have going for them, why not give them a try? Check out the angel cards if you haven't. And I don't think I've seen anybody in the tarot community bring them up. Check them out. I'll see if I can put either a link to them. I'll try to remember to list all of these decks down below. There's not a lot here that's extraordinary, but I'll try to put them, the names down in the description box, and I'll try to put a link to the angel cards in case anybody's willing to give them a try. You know, you don't get the art wow factor that you get with a lot of things, but again, very cut and dried. It tells you what you need to know. And sometimes, again, it's not all, pretty much they're positive words, but some of these positive words are things that you might not want to hear, like obedience. I remember that one in particular, obedience. It's like, but I don't want to be obedient. Alright, so the next one would be the Fairies Oracle. Brian Froud's Fairies Oracle. And a big part of the reason that this deck would be coming, well, there's lots of reasons, but so when I say that, I'm thinking, well, there's more than one big reason, you know, so more than one big reason. First one that I initially was saying is because it can give you positive readings and negative readings. It can keep things light and happy, and it can go deep. But you don't get to choose. So the other day I took them out I just wanted this fairy energy, and I took it out, and it gave me a good whacking. It gave me more than I was bargaining for. It's like I wanted to pull 3 cards and just, you know, like spend the day kind of processing those 3 cards, but it gave me 3 cards, and it's like, oh dear, I'm going to have to go deeper into this, because this is not a daze. I need to investigate. And so it's that kind of a deck. So essentially, I guess among the decks that are here, I would say that this kind of serves, well, there's maybe another one, but serves kind of a shadow work purpose, potentially. Yeah. And the other big reason is the association with family. You know, the Froud fairies, and that association with my family, my childhood, and all of that. Just having a bit of Froud in my life, I think. And I'm not so much, I think I have one of the books, but I don't always know that I'm going to want to carry those big books around with me. So this is kind of a pocket version of that Brian Froud fairy energy. The next one is the Enchanted Map Oracle by Colette Baron Reid. And this, I like the art, but the main reason that I would want to keep this oracle, so with most of the other oracle decks that I've got on this list, I would have to read the guidebook. With this deck, I don't have to read the guidebook. from the keywords and the images, I get all I need to do a reading. I rarely go to the guidebook for this particular deck. And I'm so glad that they put it out in a version that's more shuffleable, more easily shuffled. So, yep. The Enchanted Map, because it's so readable. It's so readable as an oracle deck. And again, has a balance of kind of positive and negative aspects of life that can come up through that. So it's not all sunshine and roses. But I feel like it is forward movement, like it's all about kind of moving you forward. So I think, is this the, no, two more oracle decks. The next one is also in a fancy bag. It's interesting that I ended up choosing, and I didn't choose these by looking at my shelves. I chose them by looking at a list. I'd forgotten that I also had this one in a fancy bag. So this is the Sacred Mysteries Chakra Oracle. I think this is the only deck on this list that I have gotten within the last couple of years. Did I get this year or last year? I know that I started exploring it this year. And this is the other one that can potentially give some shadowy messages, more in the guidebook than on the surface of the cards themselves. But that's another reason why, well, actually it's the main reason why I wanted this deck. I wanted to keep this deck because I feel like it, that it's good for giving me lessons. Well, here we go. Illusion. You know, and giving me some deep thought, some things to think about. Fear. There you go. Giving me some things to think about. I've never tried to pair this with the fairies. I wonder how that would go. What is that one? Creation. And, yep, intuition. So another deck that's, I like that it's chakra oriented as well, but another deck that definitely can do light and dark is beautiful. It also is using an artist, Peter Weltevried. Is that even, I don't have, since I keep it in the bag, I don't have it. Anyway, I have a big print of his that my sister gave me many years ago of, oh my goodness, Lakshmi. So there is that connection, but it's mainly because it's a good guidebook, frankly. And lovely art, but it's not art that I'm super attracted to. But it all works. It's mainly the messages. And this next one, well, I love the art of this one, is the Wild Kuan Yin. This is kind of an inner child deck for me, believe it or not. These are my notes. Because the guidebook, I could read the guidebook, because the guidebook does have a lot of stuff in it, but it has too much in it. To me, the guidebook doesn't quite match the cards, I didn't feel like. And so I kind of made my own notes, my own meanings. But again, maybe it's the relationship to the animals. That even though there's relationships to people, but it could be that the relationships to the animals in this deck, and it's just, I don't know that this is quite a hug deck, but of the decks I have on this list, the ones that come closest to hug decks would be this, and probably the Enchanted Map, although, you know, that one you just never know if it'll hit you with one of the other I can't remember, storm fields or something like that. But even the storm fields in Enchanted Maps has a little bit of the edge taken off. But this says Safe to Fall. Princess of Purity leaps across. See, that stuff doesn't work for me. But I love the art. I love this. I'm not sure I could live without this card. I love this. And the fact that there are other older people in here, and little girls with their herds of sheep and the birds flying, and the really expansive, that's all mountains behind her, really expansive landscapes. Yeah, the Snow Shepherdess. Yeah, the sense of family and community. Yep. So yeah, I would keep the Wild Kuan Yin. And I do pull that deck kind of when I'm when I want something positive to focus on. I go to the Wild Kuan Yin. And I pull 1 to 3 cards. Whereas like with the Enchanted Map, I can pull an entire spread. And even with the medicine cards, I will usually do 5 cards. Center, above, below, east and west, generally. To get an overall feel for something that's going on. Alright, so that's it. That's my 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Oracle decks, which left me with only 4 tarot decks out of my like 50-some tarot decks that I have. So, yeah, first off was definitely a Rider-Waite-Smith. I didn't preface this, and I should have, that my assumption going into this was that I was picking 10 decks to read for myself. That I was picking 10 decks for me. Cards that I could use for others. I could use the Enchanted Map for other people and have the angel cards. People might feel underwhelmed by how simple they are, but I love their messages. I don't even know that I would use the medicine cards, because with the medicine cards, I can go to the book or I cannot go to the book, but I like to read the book. The same is pretty much true with the fairies. I like to take my time and absorb the message, and it's like maybe my first impressions without the book is what will stick with me. But I still like that process of grabbing the book and taking a look at it with those decks. And so I'm less inclined to use them with other people unless it's family members or somebody else who I know likes to dig in and mull and, isn't looking for a quick answer or a very straightforward or clear answer. The Rider-Waite-Smith can be used, and this is the Centennial Edition, particularly in the tin. I also have the larger edition, but I do usually grab the tin because it's so easy to shuffle and I have hand issues. And I'm not going to go out of my way to show this. I know everybody's seen these cards before. But yeah, so, just very versatile, a pretty easy, clear reader for the most part. Again, I tend to fault the way a question being asked if I don't get a clear answer from this deck. It's like, to me, that means that I'm probably needing to adjust the question that I'm asking. But yeah, and there's the Chariot, my birth card. So I'm not sure I need to explain that too much. Easy, convenient, clear, and I do a lot of decision making types of readings using this deck and being a single person. It's great to have a deck that's good for going to do this or do that. You know, to ask those kinds of questions and get pretty clear answers. So for practical purposes, I would definitely keep that deck just for that one process, for helping me think about decisions I'm trying to make. All right. Next is the Animal Wise Tarot by Ted Andrews. So this is not an attractive deck. I think it is not an attractive deck in any way. Why do I have them split a little bit? Or is it just this one? Or just a few? But I definitely do have them split a little bit. I bet it's because I'm going through, yep, Chameleon. I use this, so I'm not going to show too much about this deck. But I'll show you these cards because these are the cards that I'm going through my year. So I did this annual spread, birthday to birthday month spread, and there's an animal from this deck for every month. And so this is Chameleon. Is Chameleon this? I think Chameleon was last month. So it should probably be moved to the back. I think Dove is November. Pretty sure. And then I have Rose-Breasted Grosbeak. So this is another deck, another animal deck for one thing. And that I like to read the guidebook. So this has the name of the animal. It has an association, a tarot association, air, swords, 6 of winged ones would be like the 6 of swords, moving toward peace. And then it has key phrase at the bottom, moving between cycles and worlds. So, and it's mostly the words. The pictures are just a picture of an animal, and often not a very good picture of an animal. Although here we do, it looks like, have a fledgling young in the nest, and so you could see this adult is like, hey, it's time to get out of the nest here. You could have that sort of thing going on. But it's still one of those ones, kind of like with the Fairies Oracle, where I get this and I can get Dove. Well, you know, there's so many associations with Dove and peace, and yet 6 of Swords. It's like you don't need to necessarily go deeper, but the book often does, because it talks a little bit about the habits of the birds, and he will talk about how different cultures have interpreted the dove, and so things will often come up in the guidebook that I wouldn't otherwise have associated with that card. This is another one that I probably would not read for others with, because, you know, even 3 cards, to get the most out of it would be to go to the guidebook and read the guidebook thoroughly. So there is that. But I would not want to be without it. I like the multi-dimensional facets of the guidebook, where I can look and glean any variety of messages from it. All right, next we have the Prairie Tarot. So, in that, partly because it's a very versatile deck, I can use it for just about anything. And different kinds of readings that I do, I would say it's, you can still use it for love readings or something like that. But career, everyday life, since it has to do with the frontier period in U.S. history, it is about kind of pushing through, moving forward. It doesn't completely shy away from some of the negative aspects of that period. It doesn't confront it completely, but it does have some of that. But it is, yeah, it's a white person's deck. It is. But the reason that I wanted to keep it for its versatility, it's also not the same as the Smith-Waite. It's not the same as that. So it's not merely a clone. And it's my landscapes. And not long after getting back into tarot specifically, I wanted, and this of course is a problem that many people have with the Smith-Waite, they can't relate kind of to the imagery. And I didn't really have that problem with it, but at the same time I wanted to bring it into my landscape and my landscapes, because I've lived in a variety of different places. I haven't spent too much time in the Northeast, but I've lived in the Western Mountains and for a time near coastal California. I'm originally from Michigan. I've spent more than a decade now in the South. So yeah, I wanted these landscapes in here, and stories, and there's the whole cowboy thing. I've never been into cowboys, but that's okay. And I've never spent that much time on the plains, and there's actually more time on the plains than in the mountains in this deck. But this is, this is the old frontier, do you want cash for your gold, or, and there's some of the ugliness, that happened in order to settle the West. And in a sense, this is some other ugliness. This is the whole saloon culture. And there's your frontier school teacher. Yeah. And I love this Tower card. I just love it. The unexpected. Your loyal horse bucks you off. Yeah. So I would keep this deck. Yeah, the very painful Hanged Man, but that is about sacrifice for spiritual. It's a form of prayer, right? The multicolored windmill. Anyway, for the Wheel of Fortune. Times when you have water and times when you don't. The Devil as two scorpions locked again in front of the saloon. The beautiful Hermit card. Yeah. So definitely the Prairie Tarot I would keep. In fact, this is one of the decks. I think it's on Make Playing Cards. I think you can also get it on Amazon. But this is one of the decks on occasion I've thought that I should get a second copy of, to make sure that if this one wears out, that I have one till the end of my days, kind of a thing. And the thing that keeps me from doing that in a way is because it is, when I first got this deck, it was pretty hard to shuffle. And I was thinking, gosh, but can I break another one of these decks in? Could I break it in again? I'm not so sure that I could break it in again. It's now getting soft and relatively shuffleable, but first time around it was like, ooh, I love this, but can I make it work for my hands? So the last deck, I was choosing between this deck, the Golden Art Nouveau, in case I wanted kind of a break from the, kind of a basic Smith-Waite, but a more glamorous, beautiful, sparkly version of it, for a break from the kind of duller colored Smith-Waite on occasion. So whether I wanted my last deck to be the Golden Art Nouveau or the Forest of Enchantment, for that fantasy aspect that is part of the Forest of Enchantment, or this deck, which is the Mystical Cats. And I just kind of decided that I didn't need another Rider-Waite-Smith, because I do have the Prairie Tarot as well as the Centennial. And the Forest of Enchantment, again, to me, it's another landscape. To me, it's, even though it takes fairy tales from various places, it strikes me as being quite rooted in the landscape of Great Britain and their forests that are depicted there and stuff like that. So I decided on the Mystical Cats because they have all kinds of landscapes in this deck, for one thing. You know, one of the things about animal energy, if you're into it at all, is it's relatively universal. Like a cat in the United States is only so different than how a cat would act in Europe or in Africa or whatever. So you just have that. And it's also very versatile. So versatility is important to me. It's also easy to shuffle. So, yeah, again, there are pretty hard-hitting, for me as an animal, hard-hitting cards in here. And joyful cards, and you know, even though it's got some hard-hitting cards, there's also an aspect of whimsy here. This is also a deck that I could read for others without any problem. And again, you know, versatility. So, yep, my Mystical Cats would be the final deck if I were to keep only 10. But I have to say, I'm so glad I don't have to keep only 10. But you know, this is actually kind of reassuring, because again, this would be a different set of cards if I were wanting to be sure that I could read for others. Or I could do a separate video. I'm not sure that I will unless somebody asks me to do this. Or if it's a separate tag that goes around. But if I were being asked to do my top 10 decks for reading for other people, there are definitely decks that would go off of this list. But it's reassuring to know that I actually could be quite happy if I just had these decks for me, and that really, even though I would have separate, there are some decks that would fall off the list if I was doing a, you know, top 10 decks for reading for others, that among my favorite decks are decks that I could easily use for reading for others, which is the Rider-Waite-Smith, this deck, the Prairie Tarot, and the Enchanted Map. And others I could read as well. Like I said, the angel cards you could pull out for anybody as well. So there it is. I could be quite happy with this set of cards if I was only reading for myself. If I was only reading for myself. It gives me the warm fuzzies to have them all out here together as those decks that I would choose. But as I said, I'm glad that I don't have to limit it, because it opens up all kinds of interesting possibilities for reading for other people by having as many decks as I have, and, you know, just switching out Smith-Waite's, and it, you know, decks for different moods, like other you know, the Dark Mansion, Gift of Life. These were all other decks that, Majestic Earth, that I was thinking that I would be reluctant to let go of, because for various reasons, really. But again, I feel like these cards that I have, these decks here, go a long way toward fitting the bill for me, for my own personal needs, living the life that I'm living. These would work quite well. Like I said, it's kind of reassuring. I don't have to take all of these decks. It would be interesting also to do it again, as Katie did. I don't know if on an annual basis or every couple of years or something like that, to just see. I'll definitely preserve my answers here to see if they change. I'm not doing a lot more deck purchasing recently, so there's less of a chance for decks to get knocked off of this list by additional purchases, but you never know. And like, I don't think I would have had the Animal Wise, which I put back in its bag, on this list a year ago. But because I've found a use for it that is important to me and that I expect to continue for my own development and perspective in life and all of that stuff, that it now is quite fundamental, and I wouldn't want to let it go. So that could happen with other decks as well. Anyway, so there you go. I hope you all found this interesting, and I hope you do the tag if you haven't yet. Chances are I will be watching it because I'm still watching this tag, and I'm really enjoying all the different decks that they share and the reasons that they like them. Take care. Bye-bye.